Hello! What if I told you you've already paid twice for nearly every single private service and commodity? It's true. You pay through your taxes going to subsidies and public government development for nearly everything in modern civilized existence, as well as paying the bills that private companies who have monopolized those services send you. This video is going to focus primarily on the largest capitalist economy, the US, but is more or less applicable to most of the world. We live under a class dictatorship of a particular ruling class. Those with the most money, property, and capital control practically every facet of our lives. It naturally follows that, looking out for their interests, they take part in a grotesque form of corporate welfare, in which they, through their government representatives and assets, take out huge sums in the forms of tax breaks, price supports, loan guarantees, bailouts, payments in kind, subsidized insurance rates, marketing services, export subsidies, irrigation and reclamation programs, and research and development grants. Don't believe me? Well, let's take a look at the facts. In the mid-2000s, government payouts to massive corporations totaled nearly $100 billion, almost 3 times the amount spent on social welfare programs like food stamps in that single year. Just to remind you, 41 million Americans rely on food stamps, just for a little perspective. This nearly $100 billion doesn't include all other forms of government aid to corporations either. For example, the US government sells off or leases billions of dollars of public natural resources, think oil, coal, minerals, etc., off to corporations far below market value, and has outdated royalty collection laws from the 1920s that have resulted in billions in profits for the companies exploiting those resources, and that is if the government even remembers to collect on those royalties in the first place. Even in times of crisis, insane sums of money are lent as assistance to the largest entities and banks, at below market interest rates by design. A corporation overcharges the government? No problem, maybe a slap on the wrist. Defense contractors need a little extra for their mergers, why not? And that's not even mentioning the stuff that government just gives away. Broadcasting rights, grazing rights on public land, infrastructure rights to logging companies, agribusiness subsidies, the list goes on. Concerning agribusiness though, the largest unsurprisingly secure the most subsidies, particularly for a handful of crops such as wheat and corn, creating massive monocrop farms that don't rotate what's grown on them, exhausting the land and requiring ever more agrochemical input to maintain output. This destroys biodiversity, destroys local environments, allows large farms to take over smaller ones, which in turn depopulates rural areas, resulting in a net negative effect on the country as a whole, but not for profits, of course. This isn't even mentioning the patenting of core and staple agricultural seeds and products, which are then made even more difficult to attain for poor or third world farmers. Not just agribusiness only, though, but airlines, shipping, railroads, along with major exporters are all bailed out or subsidized by your tax money. Just not you, it seems. Walmart has received billions from local governments. Walmart, possibly the largest retail company in the world, has received over $1 billion of public funding in the forms of free land use, water services, sewer system services, tax breaks on income and property, or even just straight up cash. Amazon, Google, Apple, Microsoft, name it, and it's probably gotten many millions if not more. Nearly every modern facet of civilized existence at this point has been extensively developed and organized using public money, from aeronautics to computers, the internet, biomedical genetic research, and so much more, only for it to be handed off to private business without those same public research platforms or the government gaining a cent. Back to the video in just a second. Let's hear from today's sponsor, Atlas VPN. For a lot of research that I do for my videos, I end up hitting pages that aren't available in my location. That's frustrating, as you can imagine, geo-restriction really does suck, but not with Atlas VPN. For those unaware, a virtual private network makes all of your internet traffic travel through an encrypted tunnel. This way, it protects you from spying, public Wi-Fi dangers, and hides your IP address and your online activities. It even allows you to change your location for all your researching needs. Developed by top cybersecurity specialists and IT engineers in 2019, Atlas VPN was created to make the internet accessible and secure for everyone. Currently, it has more than 6 million users worldwide and boasts the best VPN deal on the market. Right now, there's a fantastic Christmas special. So, what are you waiting for? Go down to the description and click that link, use my code Hakim, and get a 3-year subscription for just $1.70 a month with 6 months extra on top. But that's not all. You get blazing fast speeds for streaming or gaming, unlimited protection for all your devices, an inbuilt ad and malware blocker, and you'll get to save some extra cash as Atlas VPN will find you the best deals online from everything from your online subscriptions to airlines, hotels, and more. Have a private Christmas and a safe New Year with Atlas VPN Premium. You can have all of this for just $1.70 per month plus 6 months for free with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Click that link in the video description below and grab this Christmas deal right now. Massive thanks to Atlas VPN for the sponsorship. This is what allows me to pay my editor fairly, so the support is highly appreciated. Alright, back to the video. Large companies, those that get all these handouts, aren't major job producers either, contrary to the propaganda. Small business employs more on a relative basis, yet receives basically nothing from the federal pie. That's of course not a clean slate for small businesses either, they're problematic in their own right, and my earlier video here goes deeper into this. If they face any hardship, they get the lightest help from the government, if at all. Meanwhile, to quote Parenti, when one of the nation's largest banks, Continental Illinois, was on the brink of failure, it received $7.5 billion in federal aid. Under the deregulated thrift market adopted in 1982, savings and loan associations could take any investment risk they wanted with depositors' money, often at great profit to themselves, with the understanding that failures and bad debts would be picked up by the government. In many instances, thrift industry heads funneled deposits into fraudulent deals or directly into their own personal account. When hundreds of thrifts failed, the government spent over $1 trillion to compensate depositors, 90% of whom held accounts of $100,000 or more, in what amounted to the biggest financial bailout scandal in history up to that time. US taxpayers are having to pay $32 billion a year for the Savings and Loan Association's bailouts for a period of 30 years. This pattern exists across nearly all tax-based allowances for private business. Parenti continues. The American states compete with each other in handing out huge sums to attract new businesses and keeping old ones from leaving. State and local governments provide business with low-interest loans, tax breaks, zoning privileges, free land, and waivers on environmental regulations. This costly special treatment is justified as necessary to create new jobs, yet new jobs rarely materialize in any appreciable numbers. Baton Rouge, Louisiana, gave Exxon a $14 million tax break in exchange for a net gain of one single job by Exxon's own estimate. Michigan gave a company $81 million to build a mill that created only 34 permanent jobs, which comes to around $2.3 million per job. Even when everything hits the fan, like in 2008 or COVID, the government bailouts of massive banks and business only go to the very top. Meanwhile, millions lose their jobs and livelihoods without any help in sight. Citigroup, which received up to $45 billion in bailout money, laid off thousands of employees while handing out bonuses of $1 million or more to over 700 managers. The same pattern at every turn. Be a large business, make incredibly risky investments. If they work out, great. If not, the government will bail you out regardless of the cost to the public. Goldman Sachs, which received over $3 billion, Bank of America, which received over $45 billion, it doesn't matter, they all do it. Taxation under capitalism is a method, thus far, used only to redistribute wealth upwards. It's no coincidence that the higher up the income ladder you go, the more opportunities you get to minimize, if not outright eliminate, how much tax you need to pay. And no, before you say it, socialism isn't built on taxes, and I have a video that goes into this here. To quote Parenti, in 5 years, 2001 to 2005, tax reductions, mostly to rich individuals and corporations, including cuts on capital gains and dividends, have cost the US Treasury about $860 billion. In the last 2 decades, income from capital ownership, dividends, interests, rents, has risen twice as fast as incomes from salaries and wages. While the rich grow richer, their tax burden grows lighter. The IRS reports that thousands of US residents in the very highest bracket pay less than 5% of their income in taxes, even though their portion of total US income has doubled. People making $60,000 a year pay a much larger proportion of their earnings in federal income tax and social security taxes than a family making $25 million. Things have only gotten worse in the past few years. Many social democracies praised in liberal circles aren't much better. They instead incorporate the major tax burden on salaried professionals making slightly above average income and everyone lower, meanwhile allowing the same loopholes and exemptions for the absolute wealthiest. It doesn't matter where you are, year in and year out you help subsidize the lives and wealth of the absolute richest, meanwhile you and everyone you know gets nothing.
You lose! Good day, sir!
But can't we simply just make our taxes work for us? Some ask. It's a nice idea, but sadly has no reality. As mentioned earlier, the current socioeconomic system has, at its core, capital guiding politics. What this means is that those with the income, property, means of production, etc., are the ones who decide the rules. Increasing a portion of the pie for the rest of us is an incorrect train of thought because number one, we and working people like us made the entire pie in the first place, and two, groveling for concessions from a ruling class only works if that ruling class's power is threatened. Once that threat passes, as working class solidarity and militancy weakens or is entirely broken by fascism guided by those same interests of capital, all those concessions disappear. This is the reason why all the protections and nets the social democracies of Europe are known for are being stripped day by day. When push comes to shove and hard economic times hit, austerity comes along and speeds up all possible defunding, privatization, selling off, or otherwise destruction of public services that all of society relies on. The one thing that's never touched, though, is the wealth of the wealthiest. The rich get richer isn't just a platitude, it's true. Control through ownership or funding is exercised over major media, educational institutions, film, work culture, property ownership, and practically every other facet of existence that we interact with on a daily basis. Even if someone wealthy isn't directly connected to politics, their class interests, and the sway of their wealth, if threatened, would quickly establish itself firmly in their own camp, minimize or eliminate taxation for themselves, erode labor and environmental laws, crush labor militancy and working class political institutions, sabotage, boycott, attack, and destroy any bastion of working class power. The list goes on. The ruling class begets itself. They go to the same private schools and universities, usually having family or connections on the boards of said institutions. They get the same opportunities out of reach for the rest of us in practical training and employment positions because of that same reason. They have access to account managers and investment coordinators. Many have direct connections to the levers of power too, either through elected office or through donations. Through mostly inherited wealth, they have common financial investments and similar perspectives. If they need to, they even coalesce into advisory boards for policy formation, as in the following parenthesis quote. One of the more prominent is the Council of Foreign Relations, started in 1918, now with almost 4,200 members, including representatives from the Rockefeller, Morgan, and DuPont groups. The CFR is funded by the nation's top financial institutions, media networks, and corporations. CFR members have included U.S. presidents, cabinet officers, members of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, CIA directors, Federal Reserve officers, key members of Congress, an occasional college or university president, and major media moguls. Almost one-third of CFR members are from the corporate business sector and big banks, including directors from Citigroup, AIG, Disney, ABC, ExxonMobil, Dow Jones, Goldman Sachs, Chevron Texaco, and Halliburton. The CFR helped create the Marshall Plan, the International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank. It advocates a strategic nuclear arsenal and the U.S. military intervention in numerous countries, including the massive escalation in Vietnam. In 1980, the CFR strongly recommended a sharp rise in arms spending and a harder line towards the Soviets. All these positions became official policy. So too the war on terrorism, a venture vigorously propagated in 2002 by CFR scholars and spokespersons who produced many publications and made hundreds of talk show appearances to promote the invasion and occupation of Iraq. Groups like these embody ruling class interest in a flagrantly honest display, that being the endless pursuit of profit and ease of making profit by any means necessary. That may go from privatization to war if necessary. But that's a topic for the next video. That's all for this time. If you enjoy what I do, then please consider supporting me on Patreon. It really does help. I'd like to thank my patrons, so thank you to Peter Lewis, Emil Vakitov, Isaac Anke, Sabo, Felix Paulson, Amin Nushad, Abdurrahman, Eamon Berg, Tariq Kabakli, Morphe, Michael McGee, Abdi Adan, Jemai Bell, I Hate Humans, Robert L. G. Allen, Turgid, Tim Ferns, Josh W., The Last Struggle, Joe Morgan, Andrew Scamser, Mexus, and Balthazar. Thanks for watching.